Now call to order the Champaign County Environment and Land Use Committee. Would the clerk call the roll, please? I'm just going to cut it off.
Rogers. Farney.
Present.
Owen.
Here.
Rodriguez. Storr.
Present.
Esri.
Here.
Thorsland.
Here. All right, we have a quorum with 2 members absent. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda and addendum.
So moved. Second.
Aaron and Don, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, we have before us the minutes of October 10th, 2024 regular meeting. I'd entertain a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Moved by John, second by Dr. Storr. Any corrections, changes, addendums to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. I have some slips for public participation. Again, let's see who we have. Norm Davis. And I think, yeah, I did mine already. So. Yeah, you got it. All right, Norm, the floor is yours.
Good evening. My name is Norman Davis, and I am the supervisor for Champaign Township. I've appeared before this committee several times in the last few months, usually concerning the problems keeping farm animals in residential areas. And this evening is no different, but I will be speaking on the proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance concerning the keeping and housing of urban animals. By and large, I find this amendment well constructed and well thought out. However, as with any piece of legislation, it can be improved with a few tweaks. One point in the overview of the amendment, it is pointed out that no hoofed animals would be permitted with this amendment. The problem is, that is not spelled out and in the amendment itself. This is something that probably should be addressed and added. Without it, someone in the public could take the omission as permission, leading to more problems in the future. Loopholes are the bane of any ordinance. When my wife read the proposal, one thing she pointed out was that there was no provision for exotic animals, including poisonous snakes, crocodiles, alligators, and other dangerous reptiles, tropical cats, scorpions, tarantulas, etc. Some of this is, of course, covered by state law, but perhaps a reference and an inclusion of the state law might be appropriate. Another area of concern is the composting section of the amendment, especially as it addresses the closeness of a compost pile to a perennial stream. I would urge the inclusion of a grass buffer zone of about 25 feet within the proposed 50 feet of the stream. In other words, you've got your compost pile, you can have a little bit of area that's empty, and then a 25-foot wide barrier between the stream and the compost pile. And the grass would slow down any runoff and help cleanse any inadvertent pollution from the composting. I also applaud the inclusion of plans for the housing of these urban animals. Knowing what is and is not permitted and having a way to monitor this is a proper oversight for the county. The only thing I might add to all of this is a set of penalties for ignoring the ordinance, not only just not letting them have a permit, but maybe giving them some fines for willfully ignoring. Of course, not knowing all of the ins and outs of the zoning ordinance, this may be addressed elsewhere, but perhaps this section could be referenced. I urge the committee to listen to all of the opinions that will be expressed this evening on this issue. You will hear some testimony that is very emotional, echoing testimony you have heard in the past. And I will ask you to ignore the emotion and look at this objectively. You know, as well as I do as a township supervisor, that our duty is to the majority of our residents, not individuals. And I ask only in your deliberations that you remember this and not be swayed by emotional appeals. I thank you for your attention to my statements. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Norm. I now call Allison Harper. Push the button there, and you're on.
All right. Hello again. My name is Allison. Sorry, I actually didn't have time to prepare anything to say. I've been rather busy. I have not actually even had time to read the proposed amendment. It does sound like hooved animals being separate does imply that more than just chickens are allowed, and I'm happy to hear that. I look forward to reading the proposed amendment and discussing later. The thing that gets me is that I am giving my personal experience, and sure, there is emotion behind it, but this isn't about me. This is about the entire county. Every single member of this county that wants to raise just a little bit of their own food, to know what's going into their body, to know exactly where it came from. And you can buy soy and you can get around eating animals by doing that. But I personally don't even really like the idea of products that are grown here and sent across seas and then sent back. And I do like meat. The thing is, a half-acre property is more than adequate to raise a small amount of livestock. We have in town Prairie Farm and Curtis Orchard, which are both surrounded by residential properties. They've both been loved and accepted by the community around them. They are arguably even closer to the lazy river and water slide at Shoal and Pool. So I understand not wanting to interfere with anything that's established, but isn't competition the innovator of, or isn't, competition the innovator, or the, you get what I'm saying. They can't be the only ones. If you want food to actually real food come from this community, it's good to let people do it. When it was in my backyard, it was able to be a hobby. It was a pastime. It was relaxing. It was fun. Now, all of those things are still true. But when we were forced to move our animals, I was given the choice to give up or dig my heels down and commit and go harder and try to make something of it where we can make a profit, because this is no longer a hobby. I now actually consider myself a farmer, which I'm really proud of and I'm really happy about. But for a lot of people, they don't have the time to do that. They would like it to be a hobby. Plenty of people have half-acre to 2-acre properties where raising some animals is not absurd. And I'm glad that you're all able to listen to what I've had to say over the last several months and take that into consideration. Thank you all for your time.
All right, thank you. Terrence Conlon.
Good evening. I am here to discuss the zoning case 150AM24. I am looking to change the zoning from I2 to B4 to be able to allow retail sales of utility trailers. We're not doing anything to land, no building, no construction. We're just getting that zoning changed so the state will give me a dealer's license. So that is pretty much my only goal for this, and I'm just here to answer questions if any should arise.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for your willingness to stay. All right, if anyone else wants to comment tonight, You don't need to fill out a slip, just raise your hand if anyone wants to add anything, or I'll close public comment. Okay, public comment is closed. Are there any communications from the board? Dr. Stewart.
Yes. Yours truly is going to try to give a talk on review of activities within the Muhammad Aquifer, carbon dioxide sequestration. 6 months ago, or more than 6 months ago, I'd kind of had a different tactic on what I wanted to present, but now it's come down to just carbon dioxide sequestration because that's become a hot button issue. And I've gathered up a lot of information, and I'm pleased to say that there's going to be some other experts in attendance that will be able to answer questions and to discuss aspects of this that I am not personally familiar with. That'll be at the U.S. Geological Survey on November 14th, Thursday, at, I think it's around noon is when they start. Or you can contact me, I can get you particulars. A second item, I attended the Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District board meeting, and right now they're discussing the nutrient assessment reduction plan for the sanitary district. And the goal, what they intend to achieve, and the goals for further improvements are going to greatly reduce the amount of phosphorus being discharged into the saline branch and down at the southwest plant as well. And in fact, the work that they're going to do, they pointed out that that the phosphorus and dissolved oxygen from non-point sources, yes, at non-point sources, yeah, okay, is very high heading into the upstream of the discharge, but is reduced because of the efforts of the Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District. And I encourage folks who are doing agricultural activities to kind of consider what they too can do to help reduce the nitrates, phosphorus, and sorts of things that can kind of lead to eutrophication and poor habitat and water that goes downstream, because somebody downstream from us is going to rely on that water for their drinking water. And so, end of sermon.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else? Don? Aaron?
That was just a poorly timed cough, Chris. I wasn't meaning anything by that. I know, yeah, I know. I just literally had a tickle in my throat.
All right, Don?
Thank you. I just want to take a moment to thank Ms. Harper. I remember the first time you came and spoke to the county board, and it was about the roosters, and at that time, and I didn't realize it at the time because I was relatively new in my current neighborhood. But I'm actually the closest county board member to you and to your household, and it wasn't for months after I heard you talk about roosters that I actually heard a rooster. I was like, oh, okay, it wasn't that loud. Didn't bother me. But I'm also, I grew up around farms and didn't think much of it. But I wanted to thank you because you have come here every time, and I would say I've never seen undue emotion, ever. What I've gotten is a heck of a lot of education. It's made me think a great deal about the food that I consume, where it comes from and where it is. And I just want to applaud you for the work that you're doing because I admire you. And I just wanted to say that before I'm off the board and don't have a microphone in front of me.
All right, anyone else? I'm looking at you, JJ. Nope, nothing? Okay. All right, we'll close communications and move on to new business. This is for information only. I'm very happy to see Susan Monty out in the audience. A familiar face has come back to educate us. Item A is the Champaign County Environmental Stewards update regarding the CCES Household Hazardous Waste Collection Facility project. And I assume you will enlighten us, Susan, and have everything ready to go. Yeah.
There you go. Thank you. I'm going to get the slide set up with Tim's help. And yeah, I'm here because I wanted to provide an update about this Champaign County Environmental Stewards project to establish a household hazardous waste collection facility. And before I do that, I'm going to give just a brief bit of history for newer board members. Champaign County Environmental Stewards, we call it CCES, was founded in 2019 as a nonprofit, 501c3 exempt organization. And our mission is to support the ability of residents to responsibly manage their materials by advancing improved local and regional options for recycling, composting, food scrap collection, and safe and convenient disposal of household hazardous wastes. We foster local solutions or regional solutions for waste reduction, including reducing the use of single-use plastics, and we hope to continue to provide useful information and resources to assist residents and businesses in these efforts. Right, this should be easy, right? Up, down, there we are. Okay. There are hundreds of products purchased by consumers that contain hazardous substances. Almost everyone has leftover household products in their homes that contain corrosive, toxic, ignitable, or reactive ingredients. These are the same characteristics as highly regulated hazardous waste from commercial or industrial processes. Improper management and disposal of household hazardous waste is a threat to public health and the environment. So I'd like to show this slide and mention that in 2018, the Mahomet Aquifer Task Force identified as one of 6 potential contaminants to the Mahomet Aquifer household hazardous waste. So household hazardous wastes are capable of contaminating our soils, groundwaters, lake, and streams, and they can result in accidental poisonings and other medical problems for children and pets exposed in the home. They can cause and amplify fires when hazardous materials are stored in cabinets, basements, sheds, and garages. Firefighters are exposed, and other first responders are exposed to hazardous chemicals and highly toxic smoke when responding to these house fires. And also they can damage residential septic systems. So the EPA estimates that every U.S. household can produce at least 20 pounds of hazardous waste annually. When you think about the weight of a gallon of paint, that's not hard to believe. So I just give that as a graphic example. So, and with just considering the number of households in Champaign County alone, that can translate to 824 tons of hazardous materials generated each year. So, excuse me. residents across east central Illinois lack a convenient collection option for household hazardous waste. The IEPA-sponsored one-day collection events were offered to Champaign County local governments on a sporadic basis between 1998 and 2019. In 2020, the Illinois EPA designated Champaign-Urbana as a hub location to receive at least one IEPA-sponsored collection annually. So the annual one-day household hazardous waste collection is set up in a parking lot, is limited in its scope and capacity, and at best can serve only approximately 1% of the area population. Our CCES expects that a more convenient collection facility will allow that a greater percentage of the area population can be served each year. We'll strive to achieve HHW collection rates to service at least 10%, maybe 12% or more of the area population each year. And we will aim to increase the participation of households in disadvantaged communities in the project area to be served by the facility. Our survey in 2021 indicated hardly any of the population, aside from Caucasians and homeowners, participated in the one-day collections. So, the nearest collection facility is at least a 2.5 to 3 hour driving distance from Champaign County. And if an option is not available when you need it, it is not considered convenient. So convenience is a major need for this kind of collection to be effective. I'm going to now share some data about our project. We were fortunate to receive Champaign County American Rescue Plan Act funds in 2022. And so we have a total project cost estimate of $2,850,000. We have purchased a site. We have started work with architects and engineers. We are in the midst of a capital campaign. The architect is working on construction drawings and is about 68% complete with that process. And let's see, that's the capital costs. And I would now like to talk about operational costs. We estimate that hiring part-time chemists from a hazardous waste organization to man the facility on a part-time basis twice a month, year-round, will take, the administrative cost to do that will be $175,000 each year. And so we will be asking local governments and public agency stakeholders to provide a fair share, proportionate amount of operational costs for the newly established facility. To date, the Urbana-Champaign Sanitary District has committed to provide $25,000 annually toward operational costs, in addition to contributing that amount for capital costs until the facility is established. We expect to leverage Illinois EPA funds in the amount of $275,000 annually to specifically cover transportation and processing costs of HHW collected at the planned HHW collection facility. The Illinois EPA has acknowledged that there are areas in the state that are sufficiently remote from the limited network of existing HHW collection facilities, as you saw on that map, and has indicated its intent to appropriate funds to support these functions at up to 5 new HHW collection facilities to be established in Illinois. Our organization is recognized as one of those facilities in the works. There's another one in South Holland, Illinois, and there's another one being in early stages of planning in McLean County, Normal Bloomington area. All right. So I mentioned we purchased a site. If you are in North Lincoln, just north of I-74, you proceed past Max and get up to Saline Court, where the Republic Waste Transfer Station is. We purchased the property right next door. It's 4.78 acres. And you can see from that photo that there was some use on one side of that property, which essentially was storage of bricks by contractors. That was allowed to happen on that site. So we purchased the site and then spent quite a bit of money cleaning it up. I'm just removing the bricks. And so to avoid that from happening, we now have a chain link security fence that just was installed to prevent from dumping incidents. All right, so I'm going to talk now about, we like the site. We think it's going to be great because there's no nearby residents. It's like a waste management subdivision, and we're just thrilled that we have been able to purchase this site. So this is a very early preliminary site plan, just to give you an idea of how it's going to be laid out. It's going to, the facility will be placed on the portion of the site that had all that activity on it previously, on the right next to the waste transfer station, on that end of it. And it's going to have roads that goes completely around it. It's going to have a drive-through kind of port, covered port area where 2 lanes of drop-offs can occur. And this terrible close, I'm providing this glance at the first floor plan only to make the point that where you see the two black boxes representing the docks, right out inside of that area adjacent to it is a non-conditioned warehouse storage area of approximately 1,600 square feet that will be used and hopefully be used for the program collection site for the county's residential electronic program. So this will be able to replace the twice annual parking lot collections that occur at Parkland College. Also, this building is going to be used to participate in the recent Paint Care Extended Producer Responsibility program that was passed and probably will be effective in the year 2026 as a collection site for paints. If you may know that in the past several years, for like 12 years or so, maybe even more, latex paint has not been considered as a hazardous waste and so was never collected. But we know that paint is wonderfully recyclable, and so this was great success last year or the year before at the Illinois General Assembly passed this Extended Producer Responsibility Act, which will provide paint recycling conveniently to all Illinois residents. And so we're very happy about this opportunity. And also, last year, a Battery Stewardship Act was passed, and we expect the site to also function as a battery collection site. And that's really good news. So I'll go to the next slide, which is easier to see. Perhaps I mentioned the fence. This is just a plan showing the fence location. That's all that is. And this is a rendering of the way the building will look. It's a steel building, and it's going to be 5,800 square feet. It has 2 docks. Yeah, it's a very exciting project, and we're thrilled to be working with an architect who is also working with a design consultant that prepared our feasibility study back in 2021. So we have a lot of expertise feeding into this project. I think that's all I'll say for now, and if you had questions and wanted to ask those, I could probably entertain those.
Any questions for Susan? Chris?
Thank you for coming to give a presentation. We've all been looking forward to this for quite some time, and I know that you've worked on this for a very, very long time. And I wondered, is this facility intended for Champaign County, or would it be a regional facility?
The facility will serve all Illinois residents, and that's because the Illinois EPA is invested in its operation and wants wants to serve all Illinois residents. There's no limitations on where you live. You just need to be a resident. And I should mention, I forgot to mention 2 points. One being contractors who paint will be able to bring their used paint to this facility once that program starts up. So that's like beyond residents, and we're very excited about that. And I forgot to mention that we're about 40% of the way toward reaching our capital campaign goal, and we will be planning a public kickoff event on Wednesday, December 11th, so there'll be more news in the media about this project. And yeah, I forgot to mention that. It's pretty good progress we're making in our fundraising.
Hello, Susan. Good to see you.
Yeah.
I don't need to go back to the slide, but I think you said that transportation was 275,000.
Right.
Do you remember, or maybe John remembers, just roughly what the one-day household, what that in total cost? I was just, in my mind,
Yeah.
just wanting to compare those two numbers, just to know.
Well, that's a pretty big operation that the Illinois EPA finances. And it's the hiring of that contractor each year under contract to the Illinois EPA sets up a large operation in the parking lot with lots of staff. And so I'm not remembering the exact total number of those larger scale collections, but upwards, I'm just to take a guess, I would say at least 200,000, maybe 115, in that range. That's a wide range, but I'm not sure where exactly the cost is presently.
Thanks.
The cost to local governments to host and arrange for those local one-day, it's not local, but it's an annual one-day household hazardous waste collection event, is primarily the staff time and volunteers arranging for like a tent and the online registration. It does add up, but it's not as expensive as the residential electronics collection, where those local governments have to pay for the collector.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Susan? JJ?
Hi, Susan.
Hey.
Forgive my ignorance, but this is the first time since I've been on this committee that I've had an opportunity to hear from you about this. So after things are collected here, then outside companies come and recycle them, or what kind of, can you
Okay.
just give me
Yeah.
the high level of what really happens to this? Because I'm
Sure.
very curious.
So the facility is like a transfer station. It holds the materials until a sufficient quantity is collected to fill a semi-truck, which the Illinois EPA is responsible for hiring that contractor that serves all the rest of the 4 facilities up north and the 1 south. So the Illinois EPA will send a hazardous waste contractor with a semi-truck to pick up the materials. So it's just a temporary storage. It's not, and then that contractor has a disposition protocol for each category of hazardous waste. Some of it may be incinerated, and some of it may be chemically treated. Some of it is processed to be reused in various forms. But I mention those disposition methods because the incineration aspect of it disqualifies us from applying for a grant. So I was very disappointed about that. So one particular grant.
And then from a financial standpoint for the county, you would be looking for a commitment for an annual contribution from the county at some point for the ongoing costs?
That is correct. It does depend, though, on some other events that are in play. I'll mention 2 of those. One is the possibility of an extended producer responsibility piece of legislation being passed, and I'll talk about that in my next update. And the other is the possibility that we may be awarded a grant that we applied for, which would take care of everything for about 3 years. And then that would be wonderful, and then we would be able to work towards passing that extended producer responsibility legislation to cover all collection costs. So there's some things in play that could or may not happen. But yeah, we would divide that cost as equitably as possible and make requests to local governments and public agencies that we consider stakeholders.
Would the U of I be someone
Yes.
that would be interested in this as well?
We're
Okay,
talking to
and-
the U of I next week,
Okay, okay.
so,
And you're also talking about even the small towns so that they could
yes.
have a stake in this as well, right? Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And even adjacent counties. I mean, in northern Illinois, where there's a facility in DuPage County, all of the adjacent counties kick in. But it's a different landscape there, it's higher population and everything, so.
Well, if the board is okay with that, we have a member of the audience who also wants to ask Susan a question. Norm, just for the record, if you could say it into the microphone, that'd be great.
You wanna,
I was having a
Yeah.
hard time hearing some of this, so
Oh, okay.
my question is directly to her. May I do that?
Yeah, but just for the record, the minutes, if you could say it into the microphone, that would be helpful
Okay.
for Liz.
Norman Davis, Champaign Township Supervisor. I'm still speaking in that capacity. Now, this is just for household waste. Okay, so, and the reason I ask this question is because for at least 10 years, Champaign Township has been conducting an annual tire collection. And we have collected over those 10 years, over 500 tons of tires. And this last spring, well, let's see, 2 months ago, they had to bring in 5 semis to collect all of the tires. And the hundreds of tires every time.
and you're
So-
working with the Illinois EPA,
Yes.
local unit of government program to take that cost of
Okay,
collection.
I just wanted to clarify
Yep.
that you would not be.
No tires at this point.
Because if you wanted to, we'll let you, but.
No.
Because it takes up a lot of space, but, okay, thank you.
Nice to see you.
All right, thank you, Susan. If there's no more questions for this part, B, oh, wait, Chris, go ahead.
I'm intrigued by the design here and so forth. Does your architect kind of, or does the committee thinking out future-wise expansion?
Yes. Yes, in fact, it's wonderful working with that hazardous waste consultant who lives in Washington. But, yeah, he advised that we keep one side of the building open in case we want to expand in the future. So we're keeping the back side of the building open for future expansion. Plus, we're hoping to be able to purchase a chemical storage building for the influx of lithium battery storage that we expect to experience. Because inside the building, you can only store like 4 cubic feet or whatever the measurement is, a very limited amount, like 2 or 3 barrels inside the building at a time. I'll stop talking.
Aaron?
Not necessarily a question, but that is one thing, it looks like with your property, you do have, I was going to say before you even mentioned it, you do have some space if you should
Yep.
need to and have the ability to build another building or something. So that looks great from that standpoint.
Yeah, if you pop back a few slides to the architectural plan, you can see where there was mentioned expansion room to the back. So there, and then in the slide before that, I think also, or maybe the one after that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, you see the
I don't have
shaded
a
area
pointer,
there?
but-
That's future.
right
So,
here's where we would expand back here.
all right, if you'd like to move on to B, the CCES Household Hazardous Waste Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR legislation, to be introduced to the Illinois General Assembly in early 2025. And I'm sure you have some good updates for us about this.
Well, this is great news to me in August or earlier this year in September, actually, when I heard that Swalco in Lake County was spearheading legislation for extended producer responsibility for household hazardous waste in Illinois. So far, one state has adopted this, Vermont, and a couple of other states are working on it as well. This is happening in Canada already and probably in Europe, but it's wonderful to see it here, coming here in Illinois, and it may take more than 1 year to get this through, it may not. We'll see. Usually extended producer responsibility laws don't get past it in the first year that they're introduced. Batteries was an exception last year because everybody recognizes the hazards of lithium batteries. So I'll just mention that extended producer responsibility is a mandatory type of product stewardship required by law. It includes, at a minimum, the requirement that the manufacturer's responsibility for its product extends to post-consumer management of that product. And there are two related features of EPR policy. It shifts the financial and management responsibility with government oversight upstream to the manufacturer and away from local governments and the public sector. And it provides an incentive to manufacturers to incorporate environmental considerations into the design of their products and packaging. So that's, and we have already a chief sponsor for this bill, and it's in the Senate and in the House. And Product Stewardship Institute is working on an overview of the bill, a one-page summary. I expect to come back to this committee in January to request your consideration of a resolution to pass this. I'm going to be pushing for it as I am able to in a limited capacity. So really happy about that. I don't want to discuss the details of the bill because I don't have an easy summary of that. I have a lot of detail, but it's very exciting, and I'm happy to see it starting in my lifetime at least.
All right, any questions about that for Susan?
Essentially, that would cover all collection costs. So just to clarify that. That's why it's so wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's nice to see you again, and as usual, you always show up and educate us in manifold ways, Susan, so always nice to hear you. Moving on to new business, items to receive and place on file the ELOC to allow a 60-day review period. A, proposed zoning ordinance text amendment to regulate the keeping of animals within 1,000 feet of a home rule municipality. I think first we'll start with John, if you have anything you want to add to this. And I'm sure everyone was very good and read their packet before they came.
Well, again, this was requested back in August. At the time, we were thinking livestock, but the more I thought about it, someone could make a claim that that's not livestock, they're just pets that I keep outside. And so that's where this term urban animals came from. I've opened to other suggestions, but that's the best I could come up with. We've tried to make this more, it's based largely on the Champaign City ordinance. As it happens, Urbana has never seen fit to adopt a chicken or hen ordinance. Champaign does. This does a couple of things different than Champaign. It provides for larger lots, greater number of animals on larger lots, and it provides for a greater variety of animals, not just chickens. And the way these animals can be combined is based largely on, in terms of regulation, it's based largely on the Livestock Facilities Management Act, which is an act the state made several years ago to provide for better management of livestock animal waste. And so the focus of that act is waste, and it assigns so many animal units to each kind of animal. So again, that's so we can keep a track on the amount of animal waste. And so chickens, ducks, geese, and turkeys are all included in that Livestock Facilities Management Act. Guinea fowl, pigeons, and rabbits are not included there. I took the animal units for pigeons, rabbits, and guinea fowl from Kendall County's ordinance. Kendall County worked with their Farm Bureau to come up with an even more extensive list than what this ordinance has. But so some of this is not from Livestock Facilities Management Act, but it is from a county similar to our own. In terms of size, this starts at the basic, like Champaign allows, 6 hens on a 6,500 square foot lot, and then you can increase the number of animal units proportionate with lot area up to a maximum of about 20,000 square feet, 19,500 to be exact, and it caps it at that. As it turns out, 84% of the lots within 1,000 feet of a home rule municipality are 20,000 square feet or smaller. There are some lots that are 160 acres in size in a residential district around Champaign. But so this stops at that level. Like anything in the zoning ordinance, if you feel you can justify more animals on a larger lot and you're in the residential district, you can apply for a special use permit. The property that was at issue last year that had 40 chickens, 12 ducks, 3 turkeys, and 2 hogs, the memo misstates the number of animal units that adds up to. That's about 1.5 animal units. The maximum that we would allow on a 19,500 square foot lot, 18 chickens, is about 0.18 animal units. And want you to know that 2 sheep or 2 lambs or 2 goats would be 0.2 animal units, but we have not allowed any hooved animals in this. There's no reason. That's somewhat arbitrary. And that's one thing I'd like the committee to consider when this comes back to you in January for a referral to the zoning board. I mean, all of this is just a first take. That's all I have.
All right, questions first for John? Don?
So thank you, John, for putting this together and doing all the research. It's I'm sure, a very complicated task to throw all this together. So you said that this is our first take. Could you just really briefly describe, so then what's the process? If people, it sits there for 60 days, if people have additions, corrections, modifications, suggestions?
Yeah, I'm open to collecting any recommendations people make. I can bring those back to the committee in January. Once the committee is ready to authorize something, this would go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a public hearing. We'd advertise it in the paper. We'd send notice to all the municipalities. I don't know how long something like this might take at the zoning board. We spent a lot of time a couple of years ago on a proposed honeybee ordinance that ended up not going anywhere. I think this may be easier, but you never know till you get into the public hearing. Now, one thing I will do between now and January, I'm going to send a copy to the Farm Bureau, make sure they know about it, make sure that they understand this is only looking at lots in the residential districts within 1,000 feet of home rule municipalities. It has nothing to do with what happens in Ag 1, Ag 2, or CR, or even business and industrial. It's just residential districts within 1,000 feet of a home rule municipality. And in fact, there is a complication. I mentioned there's 160-acre lot in the residential district just outside the city of Champaign. At any point in time, that 160 acres could be used for livestock. But the Livestock Facilities Management Act has a threshold of, I believe it's 5,000 animal units. Beyond that, it would be very difficult to do something larger than that on the 160 acres. But the point I'm trying to make is, as long as it's a bona fide agricultural use, which it could be on 160 acres, this would have no effect on that because it's a bona fide agricultural use. Small lots where you can't really do that much, it's never going to amount to, in my opinion, a bona fide agricultural use.
Yeah, thanks. John, Mr. Davis mentioned the idea of like penalties, fines. Do we have, I don't recall, do we have fines in the ordinance and what?
We do have fines in the ordinance. It's a separate section. It's section
Okay, I didn't
10,
remember that.
violations and penalties. And the penalty for a zoning ordinance violation can be up to $500 a day.
Okay.
Of course, we don't assess that. That
Yeah.
all happens in court.
That was kind of my next, it would be up to the courts and it'd have to go through the whole process. That's
And
right,
courts
yeah.
are loath to
Yeah.
assign penalties.
Okay, that addresses, so this would apply, it would apply to this, but again, it'd just have to go through the process and basically what the court would decide.
Yeah.
That answers that question for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking on B1 and item section 17-19 hens, E1, and it says that you want to have a 6-foot or higher fence. And I wonder if that might conflict with other ordinances that might be in a municipality that, or, you know, about the height of fences and what kind of fence, whether it can kind of be like a privacy fence or a chain fence or what sort of thing.
We allow 6-foot fences in our residential districts already.
Oh, do we?
You said on like, you were in the B1, like page what? You said
Well,
B.
I guess it's appendix B, attachment B1.
Well, that's into the Champaign,
page-
the city
page
of
11.
Champaign that I believe is just for example.
Oh!
So our proposed, the proposed in
Right.
front of us ends on page 10.
Okay.
Page 11 was the
Gotcha.
city of Champaign's to give an example,
Right.
just to clarify
Right, so
that.
if you're reading 6 foot in the city of Champaign one, that means they allow it. So. Everything that is ours is on the A pages, proposed text amendment, so. And then I think you have parts of the Kendall one in here too, right? No, that was, I think, an earlier stuff. Yeah. Other questions for John or discussion?
Another thing I want to make clear is, and I believe the amendment makes this clear, this is not proposing to regulate cats, dogs, or any animal that you keep in your house. I live in the city of Champaign, and I know there are houses that have pot-bellied pigs inside. That would be allowable under this, the way it is right now. You could have a python, I presume. I don't think they're illegal in the state of Illinois. So this is not trying to go inside the dwelling. It's just what you would keep outside.
Right, and in regards to Mr. Davis's comments, he talked about exotic animals and things, and he listed a few, but I think most of those would be something that would be inside. And there's also other laws that cover things like alligators and Bengal tigers and elephants and things. I think that, I don't know that we want to get that far into the forest, as it were.
Right, and if an animal isn't listed here as being authorized, it's not. You couldn't have an ostrich or an emu.
Another comment or two. As Mr. Owen said, thank you, John, for the work you put into this. And then also just to let people know, this would normally be the 30-day on review, but since we don't have committee meetings because of the whole reorganizational of the county board, that's why it's a 60-day, because again, since we don't have committee meetings in December, we just have the regular board meeting.
Yeah, and that's a point I'd like to bring up. The ELOC committee that you see here tonight will not be the ELOC committee that we have in January. We don't know, most of us will probably be on it. Don won't be on it. We don't know about Emily and Jamala, who aren't here tonight. Because we reorganize and we don't have a meeting of this committee in December, what's the thought of the board that's here now in moving this to actually a 90-day so that in January, the new ELOC members, because we will have one or two, they'll come in cold on this. They won't know what in the world we're doing and why we're talking about emus. And then have to make a decision on whether they want to send it to ZBA. We could probably make this call at that meeting, but that's something that, reading this and then realizing the timeline, it's not unfortunate on time. It's when we got to it. But the 60 days doesn't give this new board, unless they're really doing their homework when they come on and we warn them ahead of time, they're going to be coming into this meeting, first meeting here, and they're going to go, okay, and then we're going to try to make a decision. And we can do our best to guide them, or we could maybe think about making this a recommendation in February. I don't know how that works with ELOC's rules. I think we can kind of decide that on our own. How do you feel about that? Aaron, you're vice chair. I mean,
I
you've
don't
been
have
around.
a problem pushing it out. It's just that to get any benefit from pushing it out, we'd need to somehow incorporate it as truly just, I guess, a discussion item at the January meeting. Because, and I'm just saying, I mean, we're all people. I mean, would hopefully maybe be able to fill in our fellow caucus members as to what's going on. But yet then again, that could happen at January as well. So, I mean, like you're saying, but I don't have a problem pushing it out. It's just that, again, I think to truly get benefit, we'd somehow have to have kind of a discussion about it in January, just to kind of bring the new committee members up to speed. So, and that would be fine.
Yeah, could it be an information-only discussion?
Or something.
Well, couldn't it be just for action, and then the committee could decide, you know what, we need to keep this here another month?
So I think we should think about that in January, those of us that will be here, and we'll see. Maybe, the one or two new people come in and they're ready to go, and then we'll go. I don't think this is a fire that needs, that's burning, that we need to go forward with without everybody up to speed on it. So, Aaron?
Yeah, I agree, Eric. This isn't just such a big fire, like you put it, that we just urgently need to act. So I like the idea of we could leave it an action item in January, but make it abundantly clear that, hey, if the committee as a whole, majority doesn't feel ready to pass it on, we'll hold it again for another 30 days.
Okay, yeah, and I think that'll work. I think that we should do that, and we'll make sure the minutes reflect that decision. And if there's no other comments on this right now, then we can move on. Is there any questions or comments from the board? All right, moving on to new business items to be recommended to the county board. The proposed amendment to increase the annual solid waste hauler fees from $35 to $50 per vehicle. John, maybe you want to just give us the really brief summary of this? We've talked about it in the full board meeting, so.
Yeah, the committee discussed this at the last meeting, and I apologize for not being completely up to speed and remembering that the state limits us to $50 per vehicle, unless you're Sangamon County and Rock Island County, and then you can charge $150 to $275, even though no one can tell us how that actually happens. That's what they're charging, and they've been charging for a long time. So anyhow, $50 is the max. Michelle Jett and the new chief of civil in the state's attorney's office have spent a lot of time on this, and the new chief of civil says, well, even though they're charging that much, I don't see any way that we can, so.
Just to wrap around to what Susan was talking about, we use this waste hauler fee to help fund some of our waste collection, and that fund is continuing to become smaller.
Yeah.
And the original discussion at the full board meeting was to raise the fee to help bolster that fund while we wait for something like the CCES to come online. But we're limited to this. So that's what we're limited to. Aaron?
Well, I'll just go ahead and make the motion to go ahead and approve upping the county's rate, our county's rate from 35 to 50.
Yep, thank you, Aaron, for always keeping me on task, and I'd like a second for that. Don, second?
I'd like to second that.
Okay.
And under.
Don, I'm gonna let Chris do it. So.
I would very much like for us to ask our county executive or our good director of planning and zoning to contact our legislators and let them know that this is kind of an impediment for our support of the CCES, year-round household hazardous waste and electronic collection. That's,
All right, any other discussion on the waste hauler fees? All right, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, and if you're a waste hauler, your bills just went up. Moving on.
By the way, I did send letters out to all of our licensed waste haulers to let them know this was going to be discussed tonight. And then the law requires, if the county board approves this month, the very next day we'll have to post a legal ad so that it can be in the paper for 30 days before this becomes effective on January 1. And we do want it to be effective on January 1 for the new licensing.
All right, so, well, they were warned, and they have not responded very well, but they now know, so, and they're probably giggling somewhere, so they don't care. Moving on to item B, zoning case 150 AM 24, request by Terrence Collin to amend the zoning map by changing the zoning district designation from I2 heavy industrial to B4 general business on a 2-acre tract in the southeast quarter of Section 6, Township 19, North Range 9, east of the 3rd Principal Meridian in Urbana Township with an address of 2306 Oak Street, Urbana. A motion? Motion by JJ, a second? I'm giving it to Don. Don's making a second on that one. Discussion, John, if you have anything to add, and I know we also have Terrence here tonight for questions.
I would just point out this is within the Urbana mile-and-a-half area where the city has protest rights. We've contacted their staff at least twice. We haven't received any comments yet. I don't really expect to receive any, but on the other hand, you never know till the county board meeting. I believe Mr. Conlon has in fact talked to their staff while he was putting this proposal together. But anyhow, I'll let the board know if we get any protests from the city.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Conlon while he's here about this? I think it's pretty straightforward. The ZBA passed it along as a recommended. So then, without further ado, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Thank you, Mr. Conlon, for staying, and you have your approval. So, yeah, it'll go to the county board, and hopefully you show up for that meeting too, in case there's questions there. All right, other business. There's no monthly reports. We had the closed session minutes going around. Did everyone get a chance to look at those and sign? Okay, very good. Chair's report. I just want to thank Don for serving on ELOC. He'll not be with us in the new ELOC in January or on the board. I appreciate that. Your input has always been very helpful. And for everyone who's come in the audience tonight and on other nights, I always appreciate your input, especially when you keep it concise. ELOC has managed to do a pretty good job of managing public input, and I'm very happy with that. So, Aaron?
Do we need a motion on the semi-annual minutes? And we usually do, I think, to accept the.
Yep, you're right.
So I would move to accept the state's attorney's office, their recommendation to in essence, keep all the closed minutes closed.
And a second? Second by JJ. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, is that something we pass on to count? No, that's just us. Yeah, that's just us. All right, that ends my chair's report. Designation of items to be placed on the consent agenda are 9A and B. And with that, this meeting is adjourned at 7, I'm going to say 38. Thank you very much, everybody.